I should have known something was off when my best friend, Sarah, insisted I just had to meet her perfect guy. Sarah works in marketing and has this annoying habit of networking with literally everyone, including trying to set me up like I'm some kind of sales project. Madison, trust me. He's amazing, super cool, and you guys have everything in common, she said with that overly enthusiastic tone that should have been my first red flag. The result? There I was on a Friday night, sitting alone at the Olive Garden, staring at the door and feeling like a complete idiot. It was already 7:25 p.m., and the guy was 25 minutes late. I grabbed my phone for the 10th time, checking for any messages. Nothing. Zero. Zilch. Nada. The waitress passed by for the third time with that pitying look that screamed, "Poor thing." She got stood up. I was about to ask for the check for the breadsticks I'd eaten alone when I saw a guy rushing in. Messy hair, ripped jeans, and not the designer kind of ripped, but like actually torn. A t-shirt with a coffee stain and worn-out Converse sneakers. He looked around, spotted me, and waved. Oh my God. This was Jake? He approached with a crooked smile. Madison? Sorry I'm late. The subway was delayed, and well, long story. It's fine, I lied, while he sat down awkwardly, almost knocking over the water glass. So, what do you do for work? I asked, trying to start a civilized conversation. Oh, I work at a company, he answered vaguely, grabbing 3 breadsticks at once. What about you? I'm a freelance graphic designer.
Cool.
He nodded, chewing loudly. The first 15 minutes were weird. Jake seemed distracted, checking his phone every 2 minutes, and when I asked him anything, he responded with monosyllables. When the food arrived, he ordered the cheapest thing on the menu and ate like he hadn't seen food in days. Not that I judge someone for having an appetite, but he literally cleaned the plate with bread. So, how do you know Sarah? I tried again. Oh, work. Networking stuff, you know how it is. No, I didn't know how it was. I was getting more and more confused about why Sarah thought we'd be a good match. I glanced at my phone discreetly. 7:47 p.m. How much longer did I have to endure this? Jake suddenly looked up from his phone. Sorry, work stuff. Emergency. You were saying? I wasn't saying anything. I was contemplating my escape route. Nothing important, I muttered. The silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. I took a sip of wine, wondering if it was too early to fake a family emergency. Just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Jake started talking.
And talking.
But not about interesting things like travel or hobbies.
No.
He began telling me, in excruciating detail, about every single episode of The Office he'd recently rewatched for the 5th time. And then, you know that episode where Dwight sets fire to the office? Classic. Have you seen it? Of course you have, everyone has, right? But did you notice that in that specific episode Jim's facial expression when... I smiled and nodded, but mentally I was already home, in my pajamas, watching Netflix with my cat, Mr. Whiskers. This was torture. Sweet, breadstick-eating torture. Excuse me, I interrupted when he was in the middle of analyzing Michael Scott's management style. I need to use the restroom. In the bathroom, I fired off an angry text to Sarah. Sarah, what kind of disaster date is this? The guy is spoiling the office for me and 8 breadsticks. Sarah responded immediately. What? Jake is amazing. Give him a chance, Maddie. A chance? The guy looks like he just rolled out of bed and won't stop talking. He's just shy and nervous. I promise he's great once you get to know him. I looked in the mirror. I was wearing heels, a new dress, I'd even straightened my hair. And there he was, looking like he'd just finished a video game marathon. I took a deep breath. Okay, I'd give it 15 more minutes. If it didn't improve, I'd make up an emergency and leave. When I returned to the table, Jake was playing some game on his phone. Sorry, he quickly put the phone away. It's just that I'm almost at the next level and... Seriously? Jake, I said firmly. Do you actually want to be here? He blinked, surprised.
What?
Of course. Why do you ask? Because you can't take your eyes off your phone, you've barely talked to me properly, and it seems like you'd rather be anywhere else.
He blushed.
No, it's not that. It's just that I'm terrible at dates. I always get nervous and talk too much about random things. Sorry. There was something genuine in the way he said it. Something vulnerable. Okay, I sighed. Let's try again. Tell me one interesting thing about yourself. Anything that's not about the office. He thought for a moment. I like building things. Like with my hands. It's relaxing. What kind of things? Oh, furniture sometimes. Small carpentry projects. Nothing professional, but finally, a real conversation. That's actually really cool.
How did you get into that?
My grandfather taught me when I was a kid. He had this old workshop in his garage, and I'd spend hours there just watching him work. The smell of sawdust, the sound of the tools. It became my happy place. I found myself actually interested now. Do you still do it? Every chance I get. It's my way of unwinding after stressful days. The conversation started flowing better after that. Jake told me about learning carpentry from his grandfather, and I talked about my craziest design projects, including that one logo where the client wanted it more blue, but also more yellow, but without it being green. I was almost starting to find the date tolerable when the wine incident happened. Jake, excited about the conversation, gestured dramatically while telling a story and knocked over his entire glass of red wine. All over me. On my white dress. Oh my God. He stood up so fast he knocked over his chair. I'm so sorry. So sorry. Let me. He grabbed napkins and started trying to clean my dress, but only made it worse, spreading the wine even more. The waitress rushed over with more napkins. People at nearby tables were staring. I was red, both from wine and embarrassment. It's okay, I said through gritted teeth, trying not to cry. This dress had cost half my freelance payment for the month. No, it's not. Look what I did. I'll pay for dry cleaning or buy you a new one or… Jake, seriously, it's fine. It wasn't, but what else could I do? I went to the bathroom again, which was becoming my refuge for the night, and tried to remove as much wine as possible. It was useless. It looked like someone had artistically stabbed me. When I came out, Jake was standing outside the women's bathroom, looking absolutely mortified. Madison, I really am so sorry. Let me call you an Uber or anything. You know what? I was so tired. I think I'd better just go. It was an interesting night. I could hear Jake calling after me. Madison, wait. At least let me pay for… But I was already outside, flagging down a car. I just wanted this night to end. It wasn't exactly rude, but he got the message. Of course. Look, sorry for everything. For being late, for talking too much, for spilling wine on you. I really screwed everything up. There was something genuinely remorseful about him that almost made me feel bad. It wasn't that bad. I lied kindly. But I really need to go. I grabbed my purse and left the restaurant, feeling the cool San Francisco October night air. What a disaster. Monday morning. I had basically blocked that terrible date from my mind. Sarah had called me on Saturday, apologizing 1,000 times, saying she didn't understand what had gone wrong. I was working from home when I received an email from a potential client. A major tech company wanted a complete overhaul of their visual identity. This would be my biggest project yet. Meeting Wednesday, 10 a.m., downtown office. Dress professionally and bring portfolio. I spent the next 2 days preparing my presentation, selecting my best work, and being more nervous than ever. This project could change my career. Wednesday arrived. I dressed in my most professional blazer, most comfortable heels, but still elegant, and took an Uber to the address. The building was impressive. Glass and steel, modern, the kind of place where successful startups become tech giants. In the lobby, a smiling receptionist directed me to the 15th floor. You have a meeting with Mr. Anderson? She asked. Yes, exactly. Great. His assistant, Claire, will receive you. The elevator was all mirrors. I nervously adjusted myself as I went up. I could do this. I had an incredible portfolio. I was talented. Confident. When the doors opened, an elegant woman in her 30s with a tablet in hand greeted me. Madison Cooper? Pleasure to meet you. I'm Claire, executive assistant to the CEO. Please follow me.
CEO?
I thought I was meeting with the marketing director. But okay, maybe the CEO was also participating in the meeting. We walked through an elegant corridor with modern art on the walls. Claire knocked on a frosted glass door and opened it. Mr. Anderson, the graphic designer, is here. I entered the room, professional smile on my face, hand extended to shake hands, and I froze. Sitting behind a huge desk, in an impeccable suit, hair perfectly styled, was Jake.
No, it couldn't be.
He looked up from some papers and also froze. Our eyes met, and time seemed to stop. The confident smile on my face faltered. The papers in his hand slipped slightly. I started. Jake began. Claire looked from me to him, confused by the silence. Do you two know each other? For about 5 seconds that felt like 5 hours, we just stared at each other in absolute shock. Jake, or rather, Mr. Anderson, looked as surprised as I was. His mouth was slightly open, as if he wanted to say something, but the words had evaporated from his brain. Claire looked from me to him, confused by the silence. Do you know each other? I started. We. Jake said at the same time. Another awkward silence. Claire frowned. Okay, I'll leave you two to talk. Mr. Anderson, call me if you need anything. She left, closing the door, and I continued standing there like a statue. Jake finally stood up. Now I could see the complete transformation. Perfectly cut dark gray suit, impeccable white shirt, navy blue tie, styled hair. He looked like a completely different person. Madison, You're the CEO? Came out of my mouth before I could filter it. You? The guy who spilled wine on me at the Olive Garden? Who ate 5 breadsticks? Who spent 20 minutes talking about the office? He ran his hand through his hair, and for a second I saw a glimpse of the awkward Jake from Friday. I can explain. Please. Please explain. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Because that night you seemed like a complete disaster? He offered, with a crooked smile that was strangely familiar. Yes, exactly that. Jake sighed and pointed to the chairs. Sit. This is going to need a longer explanation. I sat, still processing. My disaster date was a CEO? The CEO of the company that could be my big break? The universe was laughing in my face. Okay, so Jake began, sitting down as well. Sarah really does work with us. She's on our marketing team, and she's incredible at what she does. She's always talking about you, about how talented you are, funny. Wait. Sarah knew who you were? Not completely? He made a face. Like, she knew I was someone important in the company, but not exactly my position. She's new, works more with her manager. And I really asked her to set me up on a blind date because... He stopped, looking uncomfortable. Because... I insisted. Because when you're the CEO of a tech company, people have certain expectations. Jake leaned back in his chair, looking much more human than the imposing office environment suggested. Every date I've had in the last 2 years has been with women who only got interested after knowing my position. They saw the title, the money, the status. They didn't see me as a person. Okay, I wasn't expecting that. So, I asked Sarah to set me up on a blind date with someone who knew nothing about me. Someone who would judge me just for who I am, not what I do. But I was still confused. Why did you dress like that? Why did you act so weird? He laughed, but it was a self-deprecating laugh. Because I really am terrible at dates. Always have been. I get nervous, talk too much, act like an idiot. And those clothes? I came straight from doing volunteer work at a community construction site. I literally didn't have time to go home and change. You do construction volunteer work? Every Saturday. That's where the dirty, torn clothes came from. I help build houses for low-income families. That's the carpentry I mentioned. My brain was trying to reconnect the wires. The awkward Jake and the elegant CEO were the same person, and neither was exactly what I thought. And the phone? You were on your phone the whole time. We had a server crisis happening. Our system almost went down and I was trying to coordinate the tech team while trying to maintain a date. It was terrible to do that to you, and I'm sorry. And the wine. Genuine accident from a clumsy guy. That hasn't changed. He smiled. By the way, I had your dress dry cleaned and it's still in my car. And I bought a new one too because I wasn't sure if they could get the stain out. You bought a new dress? I asked Claire for help. She has better taste than me. I sat in silence, processing everything. The disaster date was making much more sense now, but it was still surreal. So, I said slowly, you deliberately didn't tell me who you were? I was going to tell you. He defended himself. At the end of the night. But then I spilled wine on you, and everything went to hell, and you ran out, and, well, I thought I'd never see you again. And now I'm here, at your company, to potentially work with you. Yes. He rubbed the back of his neck. This complicates things. I looked around the office. Everything was so polished, so professional, so different from the guy who nervously ate breadsticks. How long have you been CEO? I asked.
For years.
Started the company when I was 24 with 2 college friends. We've grown a lot since then. And you're how old now? 28. 28. A self-made CEO at 28. Who spent his Saturdays building houses for people in need.
Who got nervous on dates and spilled wine.
This was the most confusing professional situation I'd ever been in. Silence filled the office while we both processed the absurd situation. Look, Jake said finally, let's make one thing clear. If you don't want to work on this project because of our disastrous date, I completely understand. I can have Claire connect you with another company that's looking for designers. No hard feelings. Wait, I interrupted. You're telling me not to take the project? No. He quickly corrected himself. I mean, I'd love for you to work with us. Sarah won't stop talking about your work, and when I saw your portfolio online, I was impressed. You're exactly what we need to rebrand. But I don't want you to feel pressured or uncomfortable because of what happened Friday. I looked at him, really looked. Underneath the expensive suit and important title, he was the same awkward guy who spilled wine on me. The same guy who admitted being terrible at dates. The same guy who did volunteer work on Saturdays. Can I see your portfolio? I asked, changing the subject. He blinked, confused. My portfolio? Of carpentry. You said you build things. A genuine smile lit up his face. The first real smile I'd seen on him, actually. He grabbed his phone and scrolled to a photo folder. Here. These are some of the houses I helped build. And these are pieces I made at home. The photos showed impressive work. Simple but well-made houses and beautifully crafted furniture. A dining table, bookshelves, even a delicate crib. You're really good at this. It's my therapy. When I'm stressed with code and endless meetings, I go home and work with wood. Something tangible, you know? That doesn't involve screens or emails. I looked around the office. There were small details I hadn't noticed before. A bookshelf obviously handmade. A carved wooden pen holder. Small personal touches in a corporate environment. You made these? Can't help it. He shrugged. I need to have something of mine around. Okay. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to this guy than the disaster date revealed. I'll take the project, I announced. Really? Under 2 conditions. Jake straightened up. Which are? First, this is strictly professional. What happened Friday stays on Friday. Here we're client and designer. No mixing. I completely agree. Second, you're going to let me see that crib in person. If I'm going to work rebranding your company, I need to understand who the CEO behind it really is. He smiled, a genuine, warm smile. That seems fair. And one more thing, I added.
What?
If we're going to work together, you need to promise not to spill anything on me during meetings.
He laughed.
I'll do my best, but no promises. I'm still a disaster. At least you're self-aware. The next 2 weeks were interesting. Professionally, the project was going incredibly well. Jake's team was talented, focused, and genuinely excited about my ideas for the company's new visual identity. I was creating something I was really proud of. Personally, it was complicated. Jake was a great boss, attentive, respectful, always open to ideas. But every once in a while, in the middle of a serious meeting, our eyes would meet and I'd remember him eating 5 breadsticks. Or he'd start gesticulating, excitedly explaining something and quickly pull back, obviously remembering the wine incident. "You two are weird," Sarah commented one afternoon when we went out for lunch. She'd been mortified when she found out everything, apologizing for 3 days straight.
What?
"We're professional. Super professional. Too professional. It's like you're both constantly trying not to step on eggshells around each other." "Because we are. I want this project to work, Sarah. I can't mess this up because of a bad date." "But was it really that bad?" Sarah nudged me. "Because every time you talk about Jake now, you have this expression." "What expression?" "Like, he's annoying but also kind of cute." I do not have that expression." "You do. And I saw Jake looking at you yesterday during the presentation. He was smitten. He was paying attention to the presentation like any client would." Sarah rolled her eyes. "Maddie, you're my best friend and I love you, but you're surprisingly dense when it comes to guys liking you." I quickly changed the subject, but Sarah's words kept hammering in my head. Jake had invited me to see his workshop on Saturday, part of my research, to better understand the CEO, as I had said. It was scheduled, but the closer the day got, the more nervous I became.
Why?
It was just a professional visit, right? The week continued with daily meetings. I noticed small things about Jake I hadn't before. The way he listened intently when people spoke. How he remembered details about his employees' lives, asking about someone's sick dog, or congratulating someone on their daughter's recital. "He's a good boss, isn't he?" asked Claire one day while waiting for a meeting. "The best I've ever had," she said without hesitation. Jake actually cares. Not just about the bottom line, but about people. Last year, when my mom was sick, he gave me 3 weeks paid leave without question. That's rare. It was getting harder to keep my feelings in this strictly professional box I'd created. When Saturday arrived, I took an Uber to the address Jake had sent. It was a quiet residential neighborhood in Oakland, far from the glass buildings of San Francisco. The house was surprisingly normal. A 2-story yellow house with a small front garden. Jake opened the door before I even rang the doorbell, wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, but clean this time. "Welcome to my domain of sawdust and unfinished projects," he said with a smile. And so, I crossed the line between professional and personal. The workshop was a craftsman's dream. Organized, which surprised me. Well-lit, with tools carefully arranged on the walls. The smell of fresh wood permeated the air. "Wow," escaped from my mouth. "It's my favorite place in the world," Jake admitted, running his hand over a workbench. "This is where I can really be myself." He showed me various projects, some finished, others in progress. There was an obvious care in each piece, each detail carefully thought out. "This crib." I pointed to a corner. "Is this the one you showed in the photos?" "Oh yeah. My sister's pregnant. It'll be my first nephew." "You have family here?" "My sister lives in Sacramento. My parents retired to Portland. I try to visit them once a month, but I can't always manage it with work." We talked while he worked on a new table. He insisted I couldn't just observe. I had to at least help sand. It was surprisingly relaxing. "Can I ask you a question?" I asked after a while.
Sure.
"Why did you start the company? Like, clearly you love working with wood. Why technology?" Jake stopped sanding and thought for a moment. "Because I wanted to build something different too. My grandfather taught me carpentry, but my dad taught me programming. He was a software engineer in the 90s, worked in the dot-com boom. I grew up watching him create things from nothing, just with code. It was magical, you know?" I nodded, encouraging him to continue. "When I started the company at 24, it was just me and 2 friends from college in a tiny apartment. The idea was to create software that actually helped people, not just another social network or delivery app. We wanted to make a difference." "And do you?" "I try to believe we do. Our software helps nonprofits manage resources, connects volunteers with community projects, We're not going to change the world, but maybe improve it a little bit. There was a genuine passion in his voice that made me see Jake, not the CEO, not the disaster date, but the real man, in a completely new light. And the carpentry? I asked softly. It's my way of remembering where I came from, of keeping my feet on the ground. When you spend the day in meetings with investors talking about millions, it's easy to get lost. But when I come back here and build a table with my hands, this is real, tangible, human. Our eyes met, and for the first time, it wasn't awkward. It was right. Jake, I said slowly, you're nothing like what I thought you were. He laughed. Better or worse? Definitely better. We continued working in comfortable silence for a while. He taught me how to properly sand with the grain, how to check if a surface was level. His hands guided mine, and I was acutely aware of how close we were standing. Madison, he said softly. Yeah, I'm really glad you took the project. Not just because your work is amazing, but because I get to see you. My heart skipped. Jake. I know. Professional. I'm not trying to make this weird. I just wanted you to know. I set down the sandpaper and turned to face him fully. It's not weird. And for what it's worth, I'm glad too. The following week, something shifted. Jake and I were still professional in meetings, but there was an undercurrent now. Lingering glances. Smiles that lasted a beat too long. Conversations that veered into personal territory before one of us pulled back. Claire definitely noticed. You know, she said one day when Jake stepped out of a meeting, I've worked for him for 5 years. Never seen him like this. Like what? I asked innocently.
Happy.
Genuinely happy. He's always been good at his job, but there's been this heaviness to him. Like he was going through the motions. But lately, he's lighter. Maybe he's just excited about the rebrand. Claire gave me a knowing look.
Sure.
That's definitely it. The project was nearly complete. We had one more big presentation to the board of directors, and then my contract would officially end. Part of me was relieved. The tension of working with Jake while trying to keep things professional was exhausting. But another part of me dreaded it ending. Wednesday night, I was working late at a coffee shop when Jake texted. Jake. Still working? Me. Almost done with the final mock-ups. How'd you know? Jake. Because I am too. And I know you. What coffee shop? Me. Blue Bottle on Market. Why? Jake, stay there. 20 minutes later, Jake walked in, also looking like he'd been working all day. He ordered a coffee and sat down across from me. Couldn't let you work alone, he said simply. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, occasionally bouncing ideas off each other. It felt natural. Easy. Like we'd been doing this for years. Madison, Jake said suddenly. When this project ends, can we talk? Really talk? I looked up from my laptop. His expression was serious, vulnerable. About us. If there is an US. If there could be an us. My heart raced. Jake, You don't have to answer now, he interrupted. Just think about it. Because I know I said I could keep this professional, but I'm failing miserably at it. You're not the only one, I admitted quietly. He smiled. No. This is way more complicated than I thought it would be. Want to know what I think? What? I think sometimes the best things are complicated. They're messy and don't follow the rules and make absolutely no sense on paper. But they work anyway. Is that your CEO wisdom talking? That's my guy who really likes the designer but is trying not to screw this up wisdom. I laughed. How's that working out for you? Terribly. I'm a disaster, remember? Yeah, I said softly. But maybe I like disasters. Friday arrived, the day of the final presentation to the board of directors. I was nervous, but prepared. This was my moment to shine professionally, regardless of whatever was happening personally. I dressed in my best power suit, practiced my pitch, and arrived early. The boardroom was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Jake was already there, talking with some board members. When he saw me, his face lit up, but he quickly composed himself into professional mode. Madison, thank you for coming early. Let me introduce you to everyone. The board was a mix of investors, advisors, and senior executives. All intimidating. All watching me with assessing eyes. Ms. Cooper, an older woman, said, "Jake speaks very highly of your work. We're eager to see what you've created." Thank you. I'm excited to share it with you. The presentation went perfectly. I walked them through the research, the concept, the execution. I showed mock-ups of how the new branding would look across different platforms. I explained the psychology behind the color choices, the font selections, the overall direction. The board asked tough questions. I answered them all. When I finished, there was a moment of silence. Then the room erupted in approval. "This is exactly what we needed," one board member said. "Fresh but still professional," another added. "When can we start implementation?" Jake was beaming. "We can begin the rollout next month if everyone approves." There was unanimous approval. After the meeting, as people filtered out, Jake caught my arm gently. "You are incredible," he said softly. "Thank you. I'm glad they liked it. They didn't just like it. They loved it. You knocked it out of the park." Claire appeared. "Madison, that was brilliant."
Seriously.
"I've been in a lot of these presentations, and that was one of the best." "Thank you, Claire." "Jake, the board wants to talk to you about the timeline." "Madison, it was truly a pleasure working with you." She gave me a meaningful look and left. Jake and I stood in the empty boardroom. "So," he said. "So," I echoed. "The project is officially complete." "It is." "Which means we're not client and designer anymore." My heart started racing. "Technically, no." "Madison Cooper," Jake said, stepping closer. "Would you go out with me? A real date? Where I promise not to be late, not to be on my phone, not to talk about the office, and definitely not to spill wine on you." I pretended to think about it. That's a lot of promises. "I'm very committed. What if I want to talk about the office?" "Then we can watch it together, but only if you let me make my special popcorn recipe." "You have a special popcorn recipe?" "I have a special recipe for everything. It comes with being a perfectionist CEO." I looked at him, really looked. The Jake from the first date, the CEO of the company, the carpenter in the workshop, they were all the same person. Complicated, imperfect, but genuine. "Okay," I said finally, "but on one condition."
What?
"This time, you pick a better restaurant than Olive Garden." He laughed, that genuine laugh I'd grown to love over the past weeks.
Promise.
"And Madison?" "Yes. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Even though I completely ruined the first one." "Well," I smiled. "You were memorable, at least." How could I say no to the guy who spilled wine on me and turned out to be my biggest client? It's a story our grandkids will love. Our grandkids?
Jake.
We haven't even been on a second date. He turned red. I meant, hypothetically, if there were grandkids, not that I'm assuming. Oh crap, did I mess up again? I laughed and took his hand.
No.
You didn't mess up. Let's take it slow, okay? Okay, slow. But neither of us moved away. Sarah almost fainted when I told her. "I knew it. I knew you'd be perfect together." "Sarah, you had no idea. He was the CEO. But I knew you were perfect for each other. It just took a little longer for you to figure it out." The second date was that Saturday. Jake picked me up at 7 p.m., exactly on time, wearing a nice button-down and slacks, looking nervous. "You look beautiful," he said when I opened the door. "You clean up nice yourself. Where are we going?" "It's a surprise." We ended up at a small Italian restaurant in North Beach, cozy, intimate, with checkered tablecloths and candles. "Is this okay?" Jake asked. "I know it's not fancy, but the food is incredible and..." "It's perfect," I assured him.
And it was.
The conversation flowed naturally. We talked about everything: his childhood, my family, our dreams, our fears. He told me about starting the company with his friends, the struggles of those early days, the near failures, and the eventual success. I told him about deciding to go freelance, the terror of not having a steady paycheck, the freedom of being my own boss. "What's your dream project?" Jake asked. "Honestly, I'd love to work on a project that actually helps people. Not just making things look pretty, but creating visual communication that makes a real difference. Like what? Maybe for a nonprofit. Or a community organization. Something where design can help tell an important story. Jake smiled. You know, our nonprofit clients are always looking for good designers. And we could use someone on retainer to help them. Are you offering me a job? More like a partnership. You'd work directly with the nonprofits we support. Help them with branding, marketing materials, whatever they need. On your own terms, your own schedule. Jake, think about it. No pressure. But I think you'd be amazing at it. The evening continued perfectly. Jake didn't spill anything. He laughed at my jokes. He listened intently when I spoke. And when he walked me to my door at the end of the night, he asked, "Can I see you again? How about tomorrow?" I suggested. Really? Really? But let's do something casual. Maybe you can show me more of your projects? I'd love that. He hesitated, then leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted.
I didn't want to.
The kiss was soft, sweet, and everything a first kiss should be. When we pulled apart, Jake was grinning. I didn't mess that up, did I? Not at all. Though I was half expecting you to trip or something.
Give me time.
The night's not over yet. As if on cue, he stepped backward and stumbled on the doormat. I caught his arm, and we both burst out laughing.
There it is, I said.
I was waiting for the Jake I know. He never really left. Just got better at hiding it. Don't hide it. I like the real you. Disasters and all. 6 months later, Jake and I were sitting in his workshop. I was sanding a small jewelry box I was making as a birthday present for Sarah, ironically, and he was putting finishing touches on a rocking chair for his nephew. "Your sister's going to love this," I said, admiring his work. "I hope so. First grandkid in the family. No pressure to make it perfect." "It's already perfect." My phone buzzed. Sarah was texting in our group chat with updates about her latest dating disaster. Jake and I read it and laughed. "Remember when that was us?" Jake said. "Technically, our first date was way worse than whatever Sarah's describing."
True.
I set a pretty high bar for disaster dates. And somehow we still ended up here. "Best disaster of my life," Jake said, pulling me close and kissing the top of my head. I leaned into him, breathing in the smell of sawdust and his cologne. My workspace was now partly in his workshop, a desk in the corner where I worked on designs for the nonprofits Jake's company supported. It felt right being here. "Hey," I said suddenly. "Yeah, thank you." "For what?" "For being a disaster. For being late, for talking about the office, for spilling wine on me. Because if you'd been perfect that night, you would have been just another good date that went nowhere. But you were real, messy and nervous and completely yourself. And that's what made me want to know more." Jake set down his tools and turned to face me fully. "Madison Cooper, I love you." My heart stopped. We hadn't said those words yet. We'd been taking things slow, being careful. "I know it's only been 6 months," he continued, "and maybe it's too soon, but I've known since that presentation to the board. Watching you up there, so confident and talented, and knowing that somehow, despite all my awkwardness, you gave me a chance. I love you." "Jake Anderson," I said, setting down my sandpaper, "you're still a disaster." His face fell slightly. "But you're my disaster. And I love you too." His smile could have lit up the entire city. "Really? Really? Even though you still occasionally knock things over, and last week you got sawdust in my coffee. That was an accident. And you still make terrible jokes, and sometimes you're so focused on code that you forget to eat. I'm sensing a theme here. I love all of it. I love you." He kissed me, and it was different from all the other kisses. It was a promise. A beginning. When we pulled apart, Jake said, "You know what? I'm glad I was a disaster that night."
Me too.
Though my white dress still disagrees. "I bought you 3 new ones to make up for it." "You did. And they're all beautiful. But none of them have the story that the wine-stained one has." "Did you keep it?" "Of course I kept it. It's hanging in my closet. My reminder that sometimes the best things come from the worst beginnings. Jake laughed and pulled me back to the workbench. Come on, we've got work to finish. And then I'm taking you to dinner. Anywhere but Olive Garden? Anywhere but Olive Garden. Though we should go back there someday. For nostalgia. Only if you promise not to spill anything. I promise absolutely nothing. And that was fine. Because I'd learned that perfect was boring. Perfect was predictable. Perfect was every other date that had come and gone without making an impression. Jake was chaos and laughter and genuine sweetness wrapped up in CEO suits and sawdust. He was late-night texts about code problems, early morning coffee runs, spontaneous dancing in the workshop to whatever song came on his playlist. He was real. And real was so much better than perfect. Sarah, of course, never let us forget that she was responsible for bringing us together, even if her matchmaking had been completely accidental. I'm like a professional Cupid, she announced at our 6-month anniversary dinner. You literally didn't know he was a CEO. I reminded her. Details. I knew you'd be perfect together. Jake squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, She's never going to let this go, is she? Never, I confirmed. Worth it though. Definitely worth it. Looking back at that disastrous first date, the late arrival, the messy appearance, the awkward conversation, the spilled wine, I wouldn't change a single thing. Because it led me here, to sawdust and Sunday mornings, to code reviews and coffee dates, to a man who was perfectly imperfect in every way. Sometimes love doesn't start with a perfect first impression. Sometimes it starts with breadsticks, wine stains, and the words, the CEO will see you now. And sometimes that's exactly how it's supposed to be.